All right, so I've started the summary. So we're calling the meeting to order at 4:04 p.m. Sarah, you willing to do, okay, you are so nice. Minutes. All right, so our agenda. I'm gonna elevate Bill because I know we're gonna be low. We're not gonna have Eric with us. And I guess I'll elevate Rich as well because we're missing a couple of other people. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes from May 29th?
I wasn't at the meeting, but I approve.
Okay, Rick is gonna make the motion and I can second it. Any discussion, any questions or anything about it? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Okay, public comment. We don't have any public. Move right along. The DEEPS bead program. So an update on the community anchor institutions. We did get communication that let's see. We got a list was shared with us about the community anchor institutions, and the library, I'm gonna forget now. The library, Kent Center School and Kent School, the message was that they are served. And I tried to work with Sarah because, and she collected some screenshots that show that the qualification of being served as a community anchor institution, the specifications are that you're getting 1,000 megabytes per second download and you're getting 35 megabytes per second upload. And the library was not getting that. They're getting like half of that on the download. So we tried to do it, but I ran into technical difficulties. They allowed me to set up a special, as a representative of the library, to go into the bead portal, but then it wouldn't allow me to upload any documents. And I was right up against the deadline. So it was unfortunate, but Sarah has told me that CEN, the Community Education Network, was also working on trying to correct that and make sure that all the information was, yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I actually have a meeting on Friday with them because they think we have a different IP address than we do.
Oh,
so
wow.
There's something really fishy going on with all of that. So I'll update you when I know, but there's, she said, oh, well, you're getting, 1 gig up and 1 gig down. And I said, no, we're not. And then when I sent the IP address, she was like, well, that's not the IP address that we have for you. And we have two, I don't know the words. I know, Rich, you're going to laugh at me. We have 2 streams of information around here. One is like we have a staff Wi-Fi and a public Wi-Fi, et cetera, et cetera. And they think there's something wonky going on. So
Could I take a look at it sometime?
come in anytime you want.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
I did reach out to Kent School and I had a conversation with their technology person. He was reticent about doing anything that might upset the balance with CEN, which I found interesting. So he never provided me any screenshots or anything, so we didn't move forward on that. And Kent Center School didn't respond because I guess the principal's too busy with the summer. So anyway, I do think that there's good news though, because other community anchor institutions, including Town Hall and the fire department, are listed as unserved, and Marvelwood and South Kent School are listed as unserved. So they will probably be getting some funding and help to get connected. So that's good news. And I don't think I have anything else to report from BEAD. Any questions on any of that? Okay, reports on spectrum outreach. Did
I can give
anyone?
a brief update on that. I did hear back from Jennifer Young. So Charter Communications, basically the response was that there are no expansion plans because we're substantially built out in Kent. And they are embarking on a network enhancement project that'll bring symmetrical multi-gig speeds in the coming years. So they're happy to chat, and we did send a follow-up saying, here are a number of items, and Ken, thanks for sending that out. A number of items we want to talk through with them. Not a peep since then, so I will follow up. I'm not sure that it's going to result in anything substantial, but it'll be useful to get a sense of their future plans and some of the comments, some of the points that Ken had raised around pricing and so forth. So not much to report other than they came back, they said, yep, we're there. We're probably not going to do much more.
What is that symmetrical? I can't remember what you just said.
It's the speed up and down. So right now, I think with coax cable, we're limited to how fast the data goes up, whereas down, it's different. It's not symmetrical. Whereas what they had, as I understand it, and I don't know all the details, they can actually keep the coax cable, but enhance the number of nodes and locations. And that'll speed up the process. So with coax cable, you can actually get much faster speeds, and symmetrical is basically you go up and down at the same speed.
Oh, okay.
I guess maybe unrelated, but I've seen folks stringing cables on the main roads. Does anyone know, is that Frontier or is that Charter Spectrum doing their thing?
Frontier, I've seen Frontier trucks all over town.
But yeah, Bill
Okay.
was nice enough to share a card that he received in the mail. I can pull that up. I can share. He shared a picture with me.
Yeah, I got that a couple weeks ago, but on Elizabeth Street. So they are on their way.
Curious how far north of town are they going to go? Are they going to hit my house?
I don't know. All I have is just the flyer that basically says we're coming, and it had a QR code, and so you can see it here. But,
there we go. Oh, it's shrunk again on me. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really say an amount, but this fine print is like, I was like proud of myself that I actually understood the fine print. Which I'll try to read, even though it's a little blurry. Based on comparison of Frontier fiber gig service upload speeds of 1,000 megabytes per second versus advertised cable upload speeds for Xfinity gigabit plan of 20 megabytes, Spectrum internet gig plan of 35 megabytes, and Optimum 1 gig internet plan of 35 megabytes. So I guess I see this as good news that they're actually advertising and sending things in the mail. Has anybody else gotten this postcard?
I probably did, but I threw it away.
I was going
I
to
mean,
say,
I live
not that
just
I know
down the
of, but
street
that
from
doesn't
Bill,
mean
so
anything.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a post office box, and sometimes not all the mail gets to us, and I'm sure this is based on address location, so
yeah.
I'll keep an eye out in case I do get it, but
Well, what can we be doing? It seems to me like we have every interest in making sure that there's a viable competitor providing this service in the community. It seems like Frontier is a viable competitor. And since they're at a stage where they're beginning to try to build out their customer base, what can we do to wrap our arms around them and help them in this effort? Because if we do that, maybe they would be more inclined further on down the line to stretch and help us out a lot.
It's a good question. I can actually reach out again. We had that conversation with the person from Frontier. We're going to have a follow-up because it sounds like now their plans are in place. At the time, they were hesitant to share the details, but if they're literally stringing the wires and putting postcards, I think they won't be as hesitant anymore.
Well, for instance, if their plans are more firm and we have some confidence, maybe there ought to be a communication from town hall going out to the residents of Kent saying, this is what's going on. And here is a comparison of the services.
Wow. Don't expect a Christmas card from the cable company. I appreciate the spirit. Sorry, I'm not on video. My internet is down for the last day. So
Okay.
I appreciate the spirit of that, of course. And I think we need at a minimum a duopoly.
Right.
I guess the question, and this is more also an issue for the actual elected officials, which is, to what degree can we step on the scale in favor of one commercial entity versus another, in that we have no business relationship with them. That I leave up to the town.
I don't think we have to step on the scale. I think competition drives prices down, period.
No,
So-
I agree with that. I was referring to Ken's concept of communicating with the citizenry and providing a comparison of services and the like.
Well, as long as we're providing factual information, I would think the citizens would, and the residents would like to know what's going on.
Well, isn't that basically what Sharon did with Comcast? I mean,
No,
But their problem was they had people that were unserved.
hmm.
Like, and the cable company wasn't even willing to run wires to them.
Sharon capitalized a program to extend the reach of the cable network extensively in the area to unserved people.
So as far as we know, there's nobody who has absolutely no internet. I mean, we haven't really we found people that have made choices to go with satellite.
Yeah, by the definition of the state of Connecticut, yes, we do. We had 25 or so, meaning it's only satellite or wireless.
Right.
This is to Lynn, which I'm sure we'll get to, your question of the new charter for the committee, and some of the questions that raises is what is adequate service to be determined.
Yeah, that was actually a specific request that I got that we'll talk about in a little bit. But we can debate that for sure.
But for instance, it's my understanding that the Frontier fiber optic network in place will offer substantially greater upload and download speeds at a cheaper price than is currently offered by Spectrum for a lesser service.
Yeah. So you talked to a rep, right? I remember that a few months ago.
Exactly.
Did they quote you a price?
Yeah, it was so long ago. They did quote me a price, and he was telling me that I could get 300 up and 300 down, and it was for the same price that I'm getting the lower the lower speeds from Spectrum.
Well, I think you're right. I think it would be good to circle back. Khalid and Jonathan, and I can't remember who else was on that group.
And
Yeah,
Oh, Ken,
I
and
just
then
sent a
if-
note.
Yeah,
As we were speaking, I sent a note to follow up with Frontier, just asking if there's any update they can provide on their plans.
Right,
and maybe if they're willing, maybe we could have a meeting with the whole group, the whole committee.
right.
Yep.
And that way.
And
we'll all be informed.
I'm also, I think Jonathan has raised an important point. We don't want to get ourselves in, off the deep end of the water. So maybe Lynn, you ought to be having a discussion with the town attorney and maybe with Marty more directly about, look, here's what's going on. These are some of the things we're kind of kicking around. We want to make sure that if we do embark on something like this, we want to make sure we're on solid ground.
Mhm.
And we have guardrails to know, look, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do.
Okay.
one thing I would point out, and again, I am making this statement not based on knowledge of Kent, but experiences in other communities. So where my business is in Washington State, there have been 2 fiber optic providers. One is called Zippy, which Khalid's probably heard about, which is this national fiber only player.
Yeah.
I think you can count on not just email leaflets. I think every home that is served by Frontier, it will not surprise me that they have people going to people's door.
Oh,
That
the rep told me that once the service is in place, they're going to have an army of college and high school kids knocking on doors in the community.
So I think
going-
you're going to get, to Ken's point, you're going to get a duopoly for sure in whatever areas are passed. And I think it'll be very intense, which is good news for Kent. Bravo. Let's celebrate. And, I think the issue is going to be peeling back the onion and finding out, for example, how far Frontier is planning to expand their network. In our conversation, and Khalid, Ken, please correct me if I get my brain cells twisted. They told us they were starting with South Kent and then moving to the center of town based on network topology and density. And then they didn't, not that they were not telling us anything or being mistrustful, they just didn't tell us what the rest of the plan was because of a lack of information. So we're sort of in the dark as to the extent that the Frontier network, are they going to cover, for example, all homes that are served by Frontier phone service today? Do not know.
Well, I didn't, I live on Upper Kent Hollow Road, and that's in East Kent. And I had just assumed that, I wasn't in the geography. And when we drove up today, I saw 3 Frontier trucks on roads that were close to my home. Now, maybe they were having issues with their network. But that maybe led me to believe that maybe something else is going on. So
Okay. Sounds very interesting. So we will see, we'll see what they're interested in sharing with us. And
right. And just by the fact that we have more and more conversations and we start making communications back and forth, I think that's going to encourage Spectrum to see what they can do to get closer to us, because they may feel they don't want to miss out on an opportunity to protect their franchise here.
mhm. Okay. So we were, the next thing on our agenda is outreach to towns. So I was very late in getting this put in our folder, but I will share my screen. And I'm going to be very candid. I didn't do my homework, but Eric and Bill were very good about doing their homework. So we have some cool news to share. So I'll do Eric's first and then I'll pass it off to Bill. Eric spoke to Burlington They are covered by Comcast. Just to say, just to preempt this, we decided to try to reach out to all of the Northwest Hills COG, Council of Government Towns, so we could have a good survey of all of them. So that's where these towns came from. So Eric spoke to Burlington. Town residents basically happy with present service. They are working with CEN on town hall. And they understand that Frontier is in the process of building a competitive network, but the first selectman didn't actually have the details, and they're would like to be informed of our findings. Eric also spoke to Colebrook. They're using Frontier and Charter, satisfied with the service coverage, would be interested in any new developments from our committee. Heartland, served by Spectrum. First selectman interested in hearing about our activities. Broadband has not been an issue, nor has there been discussion or complaints about service in their town.
Part of the spectrum are the same.
Yeah. So Bill, I'll pass it over to you. Bill had a really long discussion with some people in Warren, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So there were some interesting discussions around there. I'd say just to kind of sum up, North Canaan, Roxbury, New Hartford, not really a whole lot to report there. But amongst the others, Warren and Morris also is interesting just on pricing. They were saying that Frontier was talking about $25 for 500 up and down, and the first selectman there seemed to be, saying that they were kind of happy with seeing the Frontier roll out and then providing some competition to Spectrum, and it was sort of a just kind of wait and see in terms of whether they wanted to cooperate or anything. Seemed like they're pretty optimistic that'll come through, even though they said they'd been disappointed with Frontier before. But the most interesting discussion was with Warren. I had a pretty long talk there, bit with the first selectman, but then also with Howard Rosenfeld, who heads up the Broadband Advisory Committee there, which has been in place for about 3 years. And basically, they had come to the conclusion that they probably wouldn't be very successful in terms of getting any of the available funding, that the application process, sort of like what the Washington folks had told us as well, that they really felt it would favor underserved municipal communities, at least at first, and that they didn't see a lot of potential going down that route. But they are served by Optimum as well as Charter and a little bit of Verizon. So they are optimistic that that's going to bear fruit here relatively soon. They had also done a survey around 3 years ago, and it sounds like their findings were kind of similar to what we had, and they'd also had a town meeting, I guess, after they had done the survey. And at the time, an Optimum rep had told them that they'd soon be up and running with 1 gig symmetrical. And it was going back to coverage. They're about 80%. They cover about 80% of the town. But he did say that in their most recent conversation with Optimum about 3 weeks ago, that they were very non-committal on the timing of when they would be rolling out or lighting the fiber. That they had management changes and some other service and supply disruptions So they weren't even they weren't giving them any sort of date. They couldn't even commit into next year. Whereas Frontier, they said, they're talking pretty, looking pretty aggressive, and that they seemed like they were comfortable with a third or fourth quarter rollout. So, and then, just in terms of Charter, he said that their conversations with them, despite the fact that they've got, this, other competition going on, but that basically Charter had zero interest in transitioning from cable to fiber. Maybe they'd entertain expanding their existing network down another street or two, but he just didn't think that they would get, he wasn't too optimistic about getting anywhere with them. And then, they were also eager to hear what we've been doing, and, pretty enthusiastic about staying in touch, and, if there's any way to collaborate or work together, they'd be happy to talk about that.
Cool.
And
Do they have any areas in Warren that are unserved? Did you ask that question?
yes, he's not many. I got the impression, let's see, I think I did talk about that. But he said that for the most part, he said there's a few areas that might be considered underserved, and if you took a very generous assessment, but for the most part, it's, people have access, through those three carriers. So it's not, not a lot in that regard. I mean, obviously Warren is pretty, the population density is pretty low. So, I think it had taken them a long time to get served, but that doesn't seem to be the issue at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a very small town. I think
Yeah.
they're just over 1,000 people, but I haven't looked at their population recently.
Yeah, and very spread out, obviously. And that's more the issue there, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or had been the issue for them in the past.
All right. Thank you very much. Any questions for Bill? All right. Okay. Oh, I forgot to update our, so the, regarding the charge, I was asked, by the fire chief if our committee would be interested in, doing something different. He's not aware of what our actual charge was. So I told him that I'd have to talk with you guys first, and then also talk to the selectmen, because it may be that we don't want to do this. But the issue is,
Do you mean Alan Gobble?
yeah, Alan Gobble, the fire chief. So, so the issue that the fire department is experiencing is that Google Maps is sending people to wildly wrong addresses. And he wondered if the committee would be willing to do some sort of spot checking to correct addresses. So my inclination was to say, oh no, that's like, no, I don't want us to get involved. But I thought, I'm not going to decide that. I'll let you guys decide if we wanted to expand our charge.
I'll do a little homework.
It's John, and just to let people know, one personal experience, Google changed Chippewa Road, and I'm the only legal resident on Chippewa Road's name last year for whatever reason, unknown. It took us 6 months to get the main Google Maps to change it back, because that's important in that the main Google Map service is the master database for all services like Waze and various other map services that Google has. So, instead of us doing, I'll say, spot checking, if we were to at some point have a town hall or communicate about the broadband committee, we could ask people to check their Google Map address and ask for a correction if it's incorrect. Because there is a process which sometimes works very fast and sometimes works like molasses to actually change the address. If he means, by the way, that the address and the longitude latitude in the database was incorrect, he could also have meant that there is inadequate GPS service to direct somebody using a cell phone to an address. That's another issue.
No, he was saying that, that like there was an address, like even an address in town. Like he actually used my parents as an example because they
Oops.
had an
Yep.
ambulance call.
Yep.
And they're right at Templeton, which is 16 Swifts Lane.
Yep.
And it was sending the paramedic like up on Fuller Mountain for some weird reason. Yeah.
And then I'll
Yeah.
shut up, but you can actually check Google Maps and see A, how they spell the address, and B, what is the physical location on the map and what's the longitude, latitude, GPS address it's going to send someone to.
Yeah.
Now, we know about the issues of some people not being very technical in town, so I understand that, but there is a possibility for people to self-report
Yeah.
errors.
Okay. So what do you guys think? Is that something we want to try? I mean, I love the idea of sending out a communication saying this is how you could help improve the mapping of our town. But is that sufficient in you guys' view?
Would he be willing to share with us examples of where there were errors so we could try and at least look and figure out why there was an error?
Yeah,
That would help a lot.
I think they're actually been corrected. The errors that he gave, that he was the example errors, but I will double check that with him. And I'll ask him
Right.
for
Well, the question about whether we should take on additional responsibility, I think largely has to do with our individual capacity to handle new projects. And as long as Rich, who I believe said he's willing to look into it, let's be non-committal, but let's let Rich look into it for a while, and maybe he can educate us more and find out how big of an effort it is. If it's too big of an effort and we don't have capacity, then that's fine. We can drop it. But if it's not, and he determines we do have capacity to do it, then I don't see any downside.
okay.
I'll
That's
dig into it as far as I can, but a tangible example I could reproduce would go a long way.
Okay. It's funny because it's like probably people don't Google their own address very often, like directions to my own address. I know,
But-
I don't think I've done, except when I'm coming home from something.
Google thinks I'm in New Milford right now.
Oh, lovely.
It was really weird. Last weekend, I was down in New Milford taking my car to the Hyundai automobile dealership in Danbury. And for some reason, I got off on the wrong exit and I was lost and didn't know where I was. So I pulled up Waze to try to get back on course. And it was taking me to totally different city. It was
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
It was amazing. And this is down New Milford,
Yeah.
at Danbury. So I guess every once in a while the wires get crossed and
So back to what Jonathan was asking about with our charge. He suggested we should discuss and eventually agree on what the terminology of adequate, competitive, and all residents. So our charge is that we are to explore options and costs to bring adequate and competitive broadband to all residents in town, take actions to apply for BEAD funding, and as a secondary priority, explore options to improve reliability and access to cell service, and make recommendations on these subjects to the Board of Selectmen.
So I apologize if it was in the email, Lynn, where is this change in charter language? Where was this derived from?
No, that's the existing, the one I just read, that's our existing charge.
And the new one that was proposed by,
That the new task was proposed by the fire chief because he was wondering if we'd be willing to help make, find some errors and make corrections.
It's outside my skill set completely, so I mean,
But do you guys feel like we need to discuss these terms as Jonathan has suggested?
We don't have enough information on what Alan Gowell.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, so the response is, let's look into it before
Right.
we. Okay.
But Jonathan suggested
sure.
that, Jonathan's just suggesting that we should talk about our existing charge.
Well,
Okay.
no, I'm just saying, here's my fundamental point, and it's aligned with some of the points Richard and others have made on this call in the past, which is one fact historically looking backwards is that the demand, and by demand I mean the necessary service to meet normal social or business needs for internet have increased. And Richard gave examples of historical norms for that, which is absolutely the case. So I guess one of the questions we have to think through is, when we say adequate service as the first term, do we mean do we have a definition of that? Do we have a standard we're shooting for? And one of the reasons why this is important, just to add my 2 cents, is that these are not changes that can be made quickly. They require investment, deployment of networks. And as example, as Ken was pointing out, Frontier deploying fiber optic network contiguously all the way to the home or business is the best service architecture we could hope for from a technical standpoint. And we know that it has the potential for high upward and downward speeds at low latency. But we most of our town now gets what most people consider pretty good service. They may not like the price, but they think their upward speeds and downward speeds and latencies meet their needs. 5 years from now, they may or may not feel that way. But one of the key points I was trying to make is that's not a lever that can be pulled quickly. If we do believe that adequate service, and I'm just throwing out a random number, that 1 gigabit up and down service is what standard internet service is going to need 5 years from now, let's say for virtual reality, for business applications, because people working more at home remotely, remote medical services, all these things, then we start, if we believe that to be true, and I'm not saying it is, that puts a different onus on us in terms of how we look at this. Hence why I was asking the question to be debated or talked about, I should say.
And that sort of goes back to what Ken has suggested, is that we need to educate and communicate with our residents what you were just saying, that, the existing service is not going to be adequate in 5 years, and why.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting situation. I think it's, again, I'm speaking from my own perspective. This is my conclusion from all the good work Khalid did and everyone else, and speaking to service providers. I think we're likely to have a better situation next year, let's say, where the main part, the most densely populated, and those people on main commercial thoroughways are probably going to have a nice duopoly where Frontier and Spectrum are providing them services. The good news is that if you're covered by Frontier, and I am showing a technical bias, but I hope Richard backs me on this, fiber optic cable is certainly something that has much more capacity for future development in terms of speeds. And hopefully that'll be a price competition. That'll be a good thing. I think it's very likely, in my opinion, based on other experiences, that a very more material part of the town than, for example, the 25 people who are technically, as Connecticut considers, underserved, are not going to get fiber optic cable. I mean, I would be very surprised if the same percentages of people that have cable service today end up with Frontier fiber optic. To be determined, by the way. That's just my hypothesis. And if that's the case, do we care? Well, we might not care at all if we decide that we think that some level of service that's not at higher speeds matters. So, I mean, if we do care about that, then we're going to have one perspective. If we don't care about that, I'm being purposely two extremes. We're going to take a very different perspective on our thought process over the next year. That's why I thought it was worth discussing.
Makes sense to me.
So I'm sorry, I'm a little like, so we are and I completely get it. I understand what you're saying, Jonathan, and I definitely appreciate that. I'm just not sure what we're looking to do. Are we looking to change the definition of our charge?
Well, I don't think, well, from our earlier discussion, I don't think we need to do a little research, for the Google Maps stuff. I don't think that.
Yeah,
that's
no,
really
sorry, I meant
required.
the sort of the existing, other than the Google Maps stuff,
Yeah,
like adequate and competitive. I think that was by definition vague, and it's probably still vague, and it'll continue to be vague. I'm not sure that we want to make it more specific.
Yeah. No, to be clear, I agree with Clete. I don't want the charter to be changed in any way, shape, or form. It's more is it part of our effort to be determined what that would entail and how long it would take us to come to some view on those topics of what is adequate service, what does competition mean, what does serving the community mean? So that we have the end state we're seeking. I would say at the moment, and it's great, we're just trying to get the very best outcome we can from the service providers in front of us and the programs the state of Connecticut are offering, which is great. And that's the quote, low hanging fruit, so to speak. I fully believe that we can't make a decision on any of that without more information from service providers and some thought. I was just raising it because of the email that Lynn sent.
so I
And
think,
just my view is that it's adequate based on the definition that's out there, but it's not competitive because we only have one provider. So by definition, no one's competing.
And it's adequate based on the definition that's out there, but it's not adequate based on what the needs of the community are going to be 5 years from now.
Yep, completely agree. But 5 years from now, who knows what it's like?
well, I mean, I agree with you, Jonathan. We should discuss this, and because it does, if we do agree that we want to work toward, let's say we just said we wanted to work toward 1,000 megabytes download for everybody.
1 gig, yep.
Yeah, 1 gig. That would definitely focus our movement forward for sure. But I think we should just keep talking about it. We can mull it over for the next month and then come back with ideas.
And I'm sure Richard, Khalid, other geeks out there, we can also start. I'll see what thought pieces there are on this topic. Other smarter, certainly much smarter people than I are thinking about this topic. Where are we headed, right? Because I don't think any of us on this call have the wherewithal, experience, or brain power to come to the right conclusion independently. I do think, stating the obvious, I do think what Frontier ends up doing and how aggressively they build in Kent will be the determining factor of how big our challenge is or how little our challenge is.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
So Lynn, look, I agree with what's been said, but there's one other area about our charter that we're silent on that I think deserves some consideration. And that is one of the things that I've learned through this whole process is that we've got a big job in front of us to educate the community on what issues they're facing and what options they have as a resident of town. And I think we have I would like to see our charter expanded so that there's an educational component. Now, what that's going to mean is we're probably going to need to add another advisor to the committee that has some communication skills that can help us project this information in a way that's understandable by the rest of the community. But I think this is something that we have a responsibility to educate the community on what their options are and what they ought to be doing so that they understand this, because it is pretty important.
I think that I'm not sure we need to actually change the charge to communicate. I think that could be considered part of what we're doing. Because we've already talked about it, and
Right.
Um,
But I
and
don't,
and
unless,
we've already sort of done a little bit of that, but just communicating about what
yeah,
we've accomplished, but I mean, I'm happy to have another person on the committee that wants to tackle this. You know, we could
I don't-
certainly
look,
put
I
out,
don't- I don't have a name, but it seems like it would be, we've got a number of people on this committee that understand the technical components and can give insight on that. What we don't have is we don't have someone, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe one of you do have this, is to put together a communication strategy that's able to translate this very technical and subtle information to a broad range of the citizens of this community in a way that they understand and can interpret it and deal with it.
okay, I think we need to put feelers out and see who in the community might be interested in helping with that.
Okay.
All right. I think we did some good work today, and I think unless there's anything else, I'm not sure we have much left on our agenda. I have to, in terms of a task list update, I still have to reach out to a bunch of the towns and COG. I still haven't heard back from the Council of Governments, and I'll keep trying there. Because they apparently did some kind of a regional report several years ago. But I haven't seen it yet. So do we want to set our next meeting for a month from now?
I don't think I'm here in a month.
Okay. Well, July is a long month, so we could do it on the 31st. Or we could do
Yeah,
it
that's
on-
the day I'm out. I'm here
Okay.
on the 24th.
Okay, so we could do it on the 24th. Does that possibly work for folks?
Sure.
July
Works for me.
24th? Okay,
Yep, that's good.
let's set it for July 24th. At 4 o'clock. All right, so we
Lynn,
will-
could you set up a meeting with me and the fire chief?
Oh, sure. Happy to.
Thank you.
And Rich, you're welcome anytime.
I can't
to
wait.
pop in. Oh, good.
Can't wait.
I do, I do occasionally have other things going on, so give me
I understand.
a
I
sense
understand.
of when you can come by. Thanks, but it's
Maybe Friday,
mostly
maybe Friday.
right.
All right, so we'll adjourn at 4:52 p.m. Thank you all for all your work efforts,
Thank you.
and I look forward to hearing about what happens with Frontier.
Have a nice 4th of July if I don't talk to
Oh
you.
yeah, everybody enjoy the holiday.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Adjourn.
Goodbye.